Hi everyone, and welcome back to another one of the CCIR Spotlight interviews. And today I'm talking to Lily, who's been doing some quite exciting work looking at the combination or the working with engineering and then medicine and how we could combine these two fields. So I'm going to hand over to Lily to introduce themselves and to tell us a little bit more about the title of their project and a bit of a description of what they've been up to.
So, hello, I am Hyunseo Kim, Lily. I live in Jeju, South Korea, and I took the CCIR course for Bio-Inspired Robotics, Machine Learning, Design, and Control for the spring session. Specifically, I'm currently into engineering and its applications in medicine, and that was what I focused on when trying to shape my research project. The title of the paper I'm working on now is the design and validation of novel vinyl-based McKibben actuators for assistive wearable soft exoskeletons. Basically, what McKibben actuators are is they're just pneumatic artificial muscles when put simply. And what I changed from the original traditional design of the McKibben actuators is that I changed the material inside that becomes the bladder, the ball, the bag that inflates into a vinyl material. So it's inelastic, but they have like special properties that I can validate for my project.
Wow, that sounds really interesting. So then the focus of your research was on the bladder as a specific muscle?
Um, I think I have to talk about how I ended up doing this project first for you to understand how I ended up here. The initial idea I started off from was like the idea of soft assistive wearable exoskeletons that could be worn like clothes, because I didn't find any of them like similar designs in the field today. It was because I live around a lot of elder people, and I also spend quite a lot of time with my grandmother during like holidays. And I realized how my great grandmother struggled to move her arm at her own will because, it's hard to do so if you have less muscle mass in the body when you're becoming old. And she couldn't eat freely, like with a spoon, like before. And I wanted to help these people. And because for me, the most ideal purpose of engineering is to enable trivial warmth, like trivial happiness and gratitude in daily life. I know that a lot of biomedical engineers are currently doing research on like screening methods and treatments, but I also think that it's time for us to, spotlight on the field of rehabilitation, prevention of illnesses, because that's what actually blends into our lives. And basically, that was what I was trying to do, a more compliant technology that could, be used daily safely. And that was why I wanted to make a soft sleeve like exoskeleton at first to assist upper body motion. And I had like a lot of drafts of the design. But then I decided to like break down the project to work backwards. And I designated the main component of force production in the design as the McKibben muscle. And because I wanted a bit more hands-on experience that I wouldn't be able to do in normal school life, I decided to conduct a mechanical experiment in real life. And I built a DIY McKibben muscle at first using, like YouTube videos, the most basic
Wow.
design, like balloons. But then I realized that there were a lot of different variables that affected the outcome of the experiment and the muscle. So nothing was controlled in that model. And then I like noticed the need of myself to search for another method or another like material that could replace the balloon because it just had so many like random properties that I could not control. So after like popping 10 muscles using the balloons, like 20 trial and errors, I began to search for other materials in daily life that I could like use as a substitution. And that was how I ended up using the vinyl based McKibben actuator. And basically in the new design, the vinyl is acting as the inelastic bladder, like you just pointed out. And in terms of materialistic properties, um, unlike a normal traditional McKibben actuators that use elastic components as a bladder. This one is inelastic, so this means that it's much more easy to predict how it's gonna work, like how the forces are gonna disperse in the inner surface of the muscle. And that meant that if I could validate the model, it could be much more easier to control and apply this technology to such simple devices like the soft exoskeleton. And in my project, I'm currently working on validating my model, finding out how different variables like air pressure, volume of air inputted, like the dimensions of the muscle, how they affect the function of the muscle. Yeah.
Wow, I mean, that just sounds phenomenal on several different levels. I mean, first of all, I love your motivation story. This seeing people in the world around you who you could use your engineering and science knowledge to help, and particularly that it has then a close link with your family and with loved ones who are in your day-to-day life. And I think that's very beautiful, your message of the main role of, bioengineering should be about helping people in their everyday. And I definitely agree that kind of focusing on rehabilitation as much as screening. And then also just for the process, I mean, one, it's a very interesting project for you to be undertaking and very cutting edge in terms of the field, but then also the fact that you built this model. YouTube can be a very helpful learning resource. And then that you have kind of you saw that it wasn't working and you were thinking about how best to adapt it and to find this new technology. So what led you to the vinyl in terms of the material? Was it kind of your own research and adaptation, or was it in collaboration with your professor? How did that kind of spark
Uh,
for you this new interest?
the initial idea came from the first lecture of the session. So basically our professor, he introduced us to a vinyl robot. You know, research by Stanford, a research group in Stanford, and that one was really interesting, and it stuck to my mind about how vinyls in real life could be, redesigned and put into different frames for different applications. And today we use a lot of vinyl in real daily life, and we even have like clothing that uses these recycling materials from vinyl. And I thought that, why not just go for an eco-friendly muscle and maybe use the unprecedented potentials of vinyl that could, help my project out.
Cool. Because then maybe you could tell us a little bit more about the properties specifically of vinyl as a material. And I know you've said how it contributed towards your work, but maybe you could go into a little bit more detail about what specifically meant that this material was of benefit in your model and in your research.
Actually, the vinyl I use for my prototype of the muscle, which is back there, it isn't something so special. It's just like the normal vinyl that are used in construction sites, and I bought them in a store at my town. So there's nothing special about the vinyl muscle, the vinyl itself. So that means that it's very affordable and available in all parts of the world, I believe, and very reproducible as well. So I'm not sure about like the chemical composition of vinyl and how it, acts to different pressures, but I think vinyl is special because it depends on how you shape it to make it inflate. So basically, if you're cutting different edges to the vinyl, then if it inflates, they'll all have a different shape. And I thought that application and that property of inflating, it's basically like paper but more like compliant. And I thought that was the most interesting part of vinyl, and I had a lot of time to play around with that.
Cool. And I think it's as what you were saying as well, with trying to look at biomedical engineering's application in the everyday world, then if it's both reproducible and affordable and available, that actually makes it more applicable in everyday life as a potential solution in the future. And then coming back to a bit, obviously we mentioned having lectures and how from the lectures you gained a bit of inspiration for thinking about materials to use in your project. What was the rest of the learning process like being within the CCIR research program? How did you find the different components of the program as you were moving through?
So basically there were two main sessions, two main I think parts to the course. The first one was the lecture and the second one was like research guidance. The first one, lectures, it was really, really inspiring and fun because it was very engaging in terms of interaction with myself, professor, and my peers. He kept asking me questions that I did not exactly know answers to, but I'm always a student who like, throw everything out there and then probably an educated guess could get me the answer I wanted. And I liked how I was given the chance to think and, like digest whatever information that was given. It was definitely hard, very, very challenging at first because I was completely new to the field of robotics at first. So I had to like learn everything from like ground level at the start. The learning gradient was very steep, but I was still confident enough, I think, to speak out and ask my peers, listen to my peers who were more experienced than what I had at the time. And I think these are similar to like Cambridge and Oxford tutorial sessions, I think. And I always learn more from like smaller group discussions and where I, get things wrong to, remember those information for the long term. And that was how most of my learning experience went for the lecture sessions. For the research guidance sessions, every week I came up with like an update of my project and had discussions on how it could be conducted with more clarity, how the direction of research should go for a better overview of the whole field that I was working on. And I'm very confident to say that I was not perfect at all at first. And even the title that I've shared with you, that was very scrappy at first. And then my professor helped me to, trim down things that were not important. And then I was able to narrow down my course of research into focusing on McKibben actuators.
Yeah, sounds very cool. And I like your engagement and interaction with the kind of more personal level of style of teaching. It's definitely something I appreciated more at Cambridge, having that face-to-face in those discussions, even when it has to be online sometimes. And again, I admire your willingness, as you say, to learn from your peers and to really throw yourself in at the deep end for someone who had no background in robotics and is now doing this project with building your own muscles is very impressive.
Yeah.
Um, and then what do you think in terms of obviously the research techniques and then being able to write up your research? Were there any big learning points for you there in terms of how to present your findings or communicate them? Or how did you find that then? Obviously, the actual research and the model building that you did sounds incredible. But then when it came to writing up, I know sometimes it can be tricky to put all of your hard work then into something, into a paper.
Yes, definitely. It was hard, and I'm still working on it now as well. Um, I think the most challenging part was like getting the experimental data to analyze because I had plans, like an overview, an outline of all the things I wanted to do when I got my data sets ready to examine, but then the experiment was where I was most stuck at, and I'm still stuck at it now as well, but I'm working through it. Um, the main problem was that I am working with like fluid dynamics. So basically, all the air inside that closed system has to be completely sealed, and that's very hard to do so with like daily no non-lab materials. And I had to do like a trial, change something, do another, and change something as well. And in the process, I tried to record every single trial that I was going through because the changes that I was making was in attempt to improving the system, but they were quite random as well, because you never know which part of the system's wrong, that my experimental like data becomes so all over the place. So I did that using a PPT PowerPoint, like taking photos, uploading them, and then, making notes as like a research notebook online. And I was able to share that with my professor as well. And from that, because I had quite a lot of notes on already, I was able to put those into chronological order or in categorized form to, write up and finalize the paragraphs in the study. But I'm still working on it now as well. And when I was writing up the paragraphs, I was always, thinking about what my main point should be, because to be honest, the initial motivation came from a completely new, separate idea of soft exoskeletons. And then now I'm trying to write like my experience of mechanical McKibben actuator like experimental stuff, which was very different and unexpected for me. But I'm kind of working my way through. And I also emailed my professor a few times, even after the course, with like my outline, a few paragraphs, and then how do you think about this? How should I present my results? Because I thought that my graphs that I had planned for were a bit too repetitive using the same data sets, but I thought that there were a lot of different perspectives that I could speak from to analyze the results. And he gave me a lot of advice in doing such things.
That's really cool. And yeah, definitely I admire your perseverance, the keep working through the models and keep having that trial and error, but then also the doing it in such an organized manner where you are keeping track at each stage how things change, and you can go back and see both how much your project has developed over time, and then also kind of look at all the different ideas you've tried and see how much work and progress has gone into this. Because on a personal level, do you think there are things you're taking away from this project, or things that you've learned about your own ways of working, about your own approaches to such tasks?
Yes, definitely, because I knew that I was like a self worker. Like I figure out things myself, but I learned that a bit of guidance and like effective guidance could boost my motivation and aspiration for learning. And I still think that perseverance is one of grit are one of the most important things you need to keep hold on when you're studying, and for my academic life in the future as well. And because I'm going into my IB studies, I'm like going into a completely new kind of field of studying again. And I think my experience of that steep learning gradient at the beginning, I didn't give up at least. And I tried to like work through it bit by bit. And I think that will work the same through my IB course. And I'm hoping so as well, because I'm taking all sorts of subjects, like even philosophy. So I'm wishing my thinking processes will also work through my school life as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see how they would be useful with this not giving up and being willing to try something completely new and start at ground zero, but work hard to then accelerate and improve your knowledge. So yeah, fingers crossed it will go very well for you in the IB, and I can imagine that you might have at least one or two science subjects within that composition of courses. I'm hoping so anyway. And then do you think maybe in the future you might come back to the idea of these soft exoskeletons? Would that be something you'd be interested to explore, maybe?
Yes, probably. And by the way, I'm actually planning another follow-up study to, elaborate on this. And I'm doing the experiments at the same time because I figured out that I also wanted to focus on the braided sleeve component itself of the muscle, because that's the second major point, apart from the internal vinyl bag that affects the function of the McKibben actuator, and it was a bit too much to write in a single paper, so I decided to separate it. And then for the next paper, I am trying to build an actual prototype of the soft exoskeleton, because in this current paper I'm working on now, I'm just gonna like propose a design that could work. So that's what I'm hoping to do, and I want to like follow up my research to become a bit more confident in what I'm doing now.
Yeah, both in terms of repeating the research process, but then also in terms of seeing your ideas develop. And I think that sounds great that you're then going to take what you've already done within this research program and then take it a step further and see how you can continue and develop those skills. That sounds brilliant. Nice. Well, I think that's all that we have time for today for our interview, but I want to thank you so much, Lily, for talking to me and telling me about your project. And we look forward to hearing more then about this part 2 when you're ready, when you've worked through all of your experiments. Definitely, yeah, building your own McKibben activator and exoskeleton sleeve is incredible.
Thank you.